It's not healthy winning Wimbledon 17 in hindsight.
We've got some breaking news. Boris Becker will be spending 2 years in prison.
I wouldn't go through all of this without Wimbledon. If I wouldn't have won Wimbledon 17, none of this would have happened. None of this. It's nobody else's fault, right? It's my fault. I didn't study business, right? You depend on managers. You depend on lawyers. They're supposed to make your life better, right? Nobody was as good as I was at 17, 18. Not even Messi was that good. Let me ask you a question. What was the prize money for Wimbledon champion in 1985? £300,000. That's before taxes, right? Which in 1985 was a shitload of money, right? Today, the winner makes £3 million. So multiply everything that we earned. Today, it's tenfolded, right? So now, I'll give you another example. So the prize money I've won, right, which has always been written here, it's $25 million. That's before taxes and before costs. What was in my pocket was probably half, which is still a lot of money, but it's not tens of millions. Yeah. Now, I had a great manager at the time. Of course I had, Jon Teriak. Of course, he got me great commercial deals, but not tens of millions of money, right? So I was wealthy. Of course I was wealthy. What did I have then? Just to give you a better idea. In court, you have to declare what you think you've had. So, in euros, I can do that better. It was about 30 million euros, which is a lot of money. Now, let me tell you another thing. So, on the day I was called insolvent, I was cash poor and asset rich. What does it mean? I had a house in Germany. I had a finca in Spain. I had a flat in London. So I had these three expensive real estates. Now, the only thing I asked the judge is that give me time to sell my finca in Mallorca, and then I could pay the debt. What I didn't have anymore, and most athletes don't after their careers, is have the same income. We have the same expenses. And there's another mistake, I made, a lot of athletes made it. We don't have the same income, but we have the same expenses. So I kept paying the ex-wives and the kids and the schools, but I didn't have the income. That's what I mean with cash poor. And this where my problem started, is that I had too much outgoings and not enough incomings. So for a 3.5 million euros, I lost all my real estate, right?
Yeah. It was worth way more.
Way more, that's my point. So for my 3.5 million euro debt that I had to the private bank, plus the 25 interest, I lost my house in Mallorca, 10 million. I lost my flat in London for 2.5 million pounds. I lost my house in Germany for 2 million euros. So I've lost 15 million for 3.5 million debt. Again, that's not an opinion, that's a fact.
What do you now think about the kinds of decisions you were making, about the people that you were trusting?
Look, it's all my fault. Again, I want to emphasize that it's nobody else's fault, right? It's my fault. But when you play tennis all your life, you focus on the practice, on the strategy and everything. I didn't study business, right? You depend on managers. You depend on lawyers. They're supposed to make your life better, right? So, and in most cases it works. In some cases it doesn't work. Now, when I finished my career, it was about 33, 34, of course I want to learn the business side of it, but it's gonna take time. Of course, there were sharks who took advantage of the naivety. It wasn't even a question of not being educated. You just don't know the other side of business when you've been a professional athlete. I'm not the only one that happens. There's many cases like me where smart managers, agencies, naturally they take advantage of the player. That's their business. So it took me too long to realize that most of the people don't have my best interest at heart. They want to take advantage. But then the damage was done already. So my mistakes that I paid for then in 2017 really started happening in 2010, 2011, 2012, and then it's like an avalanche, like an avalanche in the mountains. But it goes, you figure, and you can't stop it anymore. I was looking for ways to stop the debt. I was looking for ways to have more income. It just didn't happen, and then ultimately I had to pay the price. It's not healthy winning Wimbledon 17 in hindsight. I'd rather would have won later, maybe more often. I was in semifinals, I lost 4. So that's something, it still pisses me off today. So winning at 17 couldn't have been healthy. I mean, there was no normal way out of this. Yeah, I know that today.
You say in your book, after the 7th of July 1985, everything changed. And later on you say, after that moment, it feels like someone else owns you. And young people these days, they laud fame, they laud money, they laud success and trophies. They think it gives them everything they ever want. And you're giving us a very different view of actually what fame is like at a young age. Would you share with us the real cost of that, how it felt to suddenly be famous? Like, what was actually going on in your life after winning Wimbledon?
I mean, just to put it into numbers, maybe even today, right? In 85, there was no internet, there was no Instagram, right? Imagine a 17-year-old Brit will win Wimbledon this summer or next summer. He probably has hundreds of millions of followers in today's valuation. He'll be a Messi, he'll be a Ronaldo. That would have been me, the 17-year-old German, right? So losing control when a whole country takes over your life, that's what happened to me.
This is a paid advertisement by BetterHelp. It's Mental Health Awareness Month, and let's be honest, a lot of men still sit slightly outside of the conversation. And we hear so much now about mental health, but not always in a way that feels like it applies to us. And for many men, mental health doesn't show up as, I'm struggling, someone help me. It shows up as stress. It shows up as short temper, shows up as sleepless nights, constantly feeling on edge. Yet we just crack on because we think that's what we're meant to do. But this is where therapy can make a difference, because therapy doesn't require the perfect words, just space to pause and understand what's going on, a place to start making sense of things. And it's something we can't ignore. 72% of men in the UK say they wouldn't seek mental health help unless they're in a crisis. That is a huge and scary percentage of us waiting until we're at rock bottom. That's why I'm so proud to partner with BetterHelp on an initiative called Say It Louder. We want to encourage men to open up, to take that first step, to share what's going on in their heads, because society taught us not to. But now society is asking us to talk, and it's time we learn to lean on each other, speak up, and change the future of men's mental health. And therapy can be the first step to making a difference. No rush, no judgment, just a place to start. So get started today. Sign up at betterhelp.com/performance for 10% off. That's betterhelp.com/performance.
Now, tennis is an international sport, so of course, some folks in America wanted the piece. Some people in Australia wanted the piece. My sponsors wanted the piece. That's what happened. So you lose control over your life. Everything is decided for you. Some people have good interests, of course they do, but you no longer can go, okay, I'm tired for tomorrow's practice. You have to give a press conference because you're not having the practice tomorrow, because the tournament sold the practice seats. People are watching your practice. Or when you don't want to play a tournament, right? You get a fine. Then you have to explain to the world, my shoulder hurts. They go, show me evidence. So you have to go to a doctor, and he has to give you medical. So everything you do is judged. Now, considering all that, I did well a long time. But I think at 25 or so, 24, 25, I thought for the first time, maybe it's time for a break because I'm too much.
When you look back on the 17 up until the age of 24, what were the kind of mistakes that you realised you were making that maybe you wouldn't have done after that?
Well, there weren't that many mistakes. It's just very tiring playing 75, 80 matches every year. It's very tiring. It's frightening to go back to Wimbledon at 18. Everybody says you're going to lose this, you're not going to defend this. So, it's very tiring, very exhausting to go at Wimbledon and defend your title. So, dealing with the pressures, dealing with the expectations. Your own team doesn't believe you because nobody has done what I've done.
Yeah.
Right? So you're pretty much alone already then. and to overcome that and to deal with that and to deal with I'm sure, just bringing Jamal again, I'm sure he's got some lonely moments. I mean, who can I talk to? Who can he talk to? Nobody's as good as he was at 18. Not even Messi was that good. Nobody was as good as I was at 17, 18. Who can I rely to? Who can give you that advice to, we had a couple guys who were that good, and then you're supposed to do A, Y, and Z. That didn't happen before.
I tell you one thing that I would love to see. Boris Becker back at Wimbledon. Are you able yet to go to the UK?
No. I'm working very closely with the authorities. The problem is that my case is so unique. There hasn't been a similar case like mine. So I'm working with the Home Office. I'm working with the Ministry of Justice, and we're all making an effort, and we're all trying to find a way. They literally also try and help me.
I just thought once you served your time,
There's rule changes. That would be a little bit too complicated now to explain that, but there's law changes. There were rule changes in the last couple of years. It's not as black and white. I'd love to come back to London. I'd love to come back to Wimbledon. It's sort of my middle name. I wouldn't be sitting here without Wimbledon. So I'm trying hard, and I'm convinced one of these days we'll meet again in London.
Have you thought about how that will feel?
Well, for me, it would probably be the last piece of my puzzle if I get back to SW19. I mean, that's the one piece that's missing. I work hard at it, and not so much. Again, of course, I'd love to work for the BBC, but just to be in the club, just to be in the club with my Wimbledon tie as a member of the club, then the puzzle would be complete.
Because why?
No, because I wouldn't go through all of this without Wimbledon. If I wouldn't have won Wimbledon 17, none of this would have happened. None of this.
It's the most remarkable story. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. I got on my flight today and the man sitting next to me was German and asked me, what am I doing? And I just said, well, I'm actually going to interview Boris Becker. And he said, Germany has fallen in love with Boris Becker again. Are you aware of that? You won a big award recently.
Yeah, they like me again. They start to appreciate it a little bit. Maybe sometimes you have to be dying to be appreciated. And maybe there's a new wave of love that's coming my way, which I like.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.